Perfect. Thank you very much, Donnelly. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So just want to, we'll start the presentation shortly. Just wanted to say there is possibly two options if you have any questions. You could either type them up in the chat and I will go through them, read them to everybody and then try and answer the question, or you could turn your mic and ask the question. Sort of try and make it as interactive as possible. I've got an hour to get through this, hopefully with some questions at the end. I'm just going to hopefully educate on a little bit of budgeting and then borrowing in the second half of the presentation. So as Donnelly mentioned, I'm with BDO Canada Limited, which is a division of BDO Canada LLP. We're one of the largest accounting and advisory firms in Canada. We've just celebrated our 100th year, and we have over 100 offices nationwide with a team of about 3,000 partners and professionals ranging from accounting, assurance, bookkeeping, valuations, mergers and acquisitions, taxation, and then the area I specialize in, which is in people struggling with debt. So insolvencies, bankruptcies, restructuring their debt. So that's really where my specialty is. A little bit about myself. I came to Canada in 2000, so 20 winters ago. I sort of measured by the winters, and have been in the country since then doing insolvency and mergers and acquisition work, and have now sort of found my home at BDO, helping small businesses and individuals that are struggling with debts. So a little bit of information on what we see in the industry or the world today is that based on a study of 2,000 people, 49% have reported low levels of financial literacy, which is the common thing we hear clients that we meet saying, why didn't they teach to us at school? And that's why we conduct a lot of these financial wellness presentations on different topics. And they're starting to actually put them into school curriculum and programs in helping people understand the basics of financial literacy. Interesting study has been going around for a while. 46% of Canadians experienced difficulty in their monthly debt payments, went up by $200. So we're fortunate in a way that the interest rates have been very low. There is talk next year that interest rates are going to start creeping up, and the fear is when that happens, the $200 is going to be wiped out pretty quickly, and so people are going to be struggling even more. We hear this all the time. 50% of Canadians are pay to paycheck, and 33% are obviously feeling the stress and from the debt loads that they're carrying. Household debt in Canada is at $1.77 for every dollar earned. So basically, for every dollar you bring in, you're having to spend $1.77 to survive, and that's where the debt and borrowing credit comes in. There's a quarter of the workforce that is spending at least 250 hours a year trying to deal with their personal finances, so they're distracted from their jobs and their work. And it's becoming more and more evident today that your financial health has a huge correlation to your mental and physical health. So we find that when people are in debt, they're obviously hearing that they are struggling mentally and physically. They can't get out of bed, they can't exercise, they just don't have the strength anymore. And then obviously we're all in the same boat where COVID-19 has not helped any of us. And has actually made it so we're hearing that people have saved money, but I don't think that's really true. I think they've just delayed the inevitable with their debt problems, and I think that's going to come to a head sometime next year, as I said, when the interest rates start going up. So savings and budgeting. So we've got the little quote, all right, I've got our budget all balanced except for food, clothes, and the mortgage. Well, it's obviously not balanced then. And as simple as it may seem, you would be surprised how many people do not follow the basic rules of budgeting. So we're going to go through that and talk a bit about budgeting and what sort of you should look at and keep in mind the best tips and tools of budgeting. So the government websites have a huge amount of information regarding this. And one of the things we've found on their website is the 6 reasons why you need a budget. So obviously allows you to stay on track. It's similar to if you go grocery shopping. Go grocery shopping with the list, not just with, oh, I think I need this, because you'll end up spending a lot more than you plan to spend. It reduces stress because you at least know at any point in time whether you got the money to spend or not. It helps distinguish between your needs and wants, which we're going to talk about a little later. And that's a very big keywords that are going out there: needs, wants, and how that works. Hopefully avoids people getting into more debt, gives you the ability to save for tomorrow, for a vacation or something you do need, that unforeseen expense, blown car tire or something like that. And as we said, be ready for surprise expenses. So when you've got to replace new tires or you get a cracked windscreen on your motor vehicle, there's less stress because you've put that money aside to deal with that. So when we talk about a budget overview, what is a budget? So it's really the first steps in organizing your money. So understanding where your money is going. People are moving away, and I like to sort of move away from the word budget. It's more like a cash flow. So where's the money coming in and how's it going out, which is, I think, a better way to look at than budgeting. Because a budget or a cash flow should be very interactive, and you'll see what we mean about that going forward. It's a personal plan to track your spending to help you make sound spending decisions. And it's also a working document to update and review regularly for changes. So part of what we do is people have to do 2 counseling sessions when they do a bankruptcy or consumer proposal. And we talk about this on a regular basis. Building a budget is very, very easy. We can all put down and say, I want to make $100 a month and I want to spend $50 a month. The reality comes into tracking it and seeing, are we sticking to that? So if you just prepare a budget and stick it in your bottom drawer, never really look at it, it doesn't mean anything. But if you prepare a budget, compare it to your actual monthly income, your monthly expenses, you'll start seeing trends of where you may be overspending on areas you don't need to be overspending, or where you need to cut things. And so that's really, the budget's got to be interactive as opposed to just a fixed in time kind of document. So the obvious items in your budget are your income, so what's coming into your household, so earnings, child tax benefits, support payments. Expenses are everything you go out at the end every month, and we'll talk, there's always 2 categories of expenses, so we'll talk about that in the next few slides. And then you've got your debt payments or loans, lines of credit, credit cards, payday loans, cash advances, and then the emergency fund or your sort of saving for the future. So those are really the key categories in a budget. And I'm going to show you on the next slide. It's a pretty full worksheet, but it's really a budget worksheet that we use when we talk to people and say, left column, put down your budget, and then every month record your actual. And if you do that for a 3-4 month period, you'll actually start seeing trends, and you'll start saying, well, hold on, maybe I spend too much money on coffee. What can I do to reduce that so that my budget balances at the end? And when we talk about balances, my interpretation of balance, it should be at a 0 balance. If you're coming that there's a negative, so your income is less than your expenses, well, then you got to start working, I call it from the bottom up, because we all know it's not that easy to get an increase in salary or find a better job that pays more money, or we're going to have to work 2 or 3 jobs to earn more income. We also know that your fixed expenses, which we'll discuss next, are fixed. You know what your rent is, you know what your car payments are, you know what your insurance is, you roughly know what your monthly cell phone bill is. So those are all fixed, you can't change those. The variable expenses, so groceries, dining out, maintenance, pets, all that kind of stuff, those are variables. So to me, that's the bottom-up approach. If you're in a negative position, you should be going and cutting what we call your variable expenses and adjusting there. If that doesn't work and you need to go further up into the fixed expenses, well, it becomes, how do you do that, right? How do you convert your cell phone bill from a monthly charge to a pay-as-you-go, if that makes sense? Or is catching the bus cheaper than leasing a motor vehicle. Those are the things you can think about. But in the end, your budget should balance to zero. So on the flip side, if you're making more money than you're spending, then there's two other options there. Pay off your debt that you have, or invest the money, save it, put it into savings, and save it for the rainy day or that unforeseen expense, or hopefully retirement or a vacation. So I touched on these expenses, some of the categories, but this is generally what you would see when you look at a person's budget as to what's a fixed expense and what's variable. And I think they're sort of self-explanatory. As I said, that fixed is something that you can't really change. We all need somewhere to live. We need to get to work. We need insurance. We need our cell phones. It's becoming more of a fixed expense. And the other side of things is groceries. It's cheap, more than likely to go out and buy groceries and make food at home than it is to go around to restaurants. Some might say it's not anymore because groceries are getting pretty expensive. Might be cheaper to catch a bus than to drive a motor vehicle because of the gas price. It's just everything's just getting out of control. And then you've got your incidental regular expenses, as your car repairs, tires, maintenance, all that kind of good stuff. Those things come up when you know you need them, or sometimes when you don't know that you need them. So in a little flow chart, as if you've got this budget, what is the two real tracks that you can go through? So on the left-hand side, you've prepared this budget and you see you've got a surplus on your budget, or when you're tracking it. And if you have a surplus and you have debt, we've got the one kind of, there's two real trains of thought of how you should deal with your debt, and there's a psychological thing behind it. And the first one I've got here, I haven't put the other one in, but I'll explain it to you, is use the surplus income to pay debts of starting with the highest interest rate. So the logic behind that is you pay off your highest interest rate debt, so the cost you're incurring every month actually comes down because you're getting rid of that debt, and that's an achievement, so you feel proud about that. The other one is you pay off your lowest debt first, and the psychology behind that is you feel accomplished, you feel achieved. So if you're able to pay off that $200 debt and get it out, you feel like you've achieved something, and it motivates you to keep sort of working down that list. So whichever one works, but they both work, but whichever one sort of satisfies your emotional attachment to get those achievements. And then if you don't have the debt, as we said, you start going down to the long-term saving goals. On the other side of the spectrum is where you've got a deficit or a shortfall. So I'll go to the gray area where it says if it's manageable, then look at ways of cutting your spending or increasing your income. So once again, bottom-up approach, reduce your variable expenses, then look at your fixed or your income. Can you get a second job, or do something, sell some items in the house that are sitting around that where your wants that are gathering dust, and you can just make a little bit of additional income from them. So those are some options there. On the other side, if they're unmanageable, so you're sitting there, you need help, you can't figure out what to do, there are options and there are programs. So there are what we call licensed insolvency trustees, which is what we are, what I do, and we sit with people, we have a free initial consultation, and we go through this budget with them and say, how much are you making, what are you spending, what are your debts? And then based on that, we're saying, well, either go talk to your bank to get a mortgage, or go try to consolidate your debts if the bank will let you, or on the last two options, which we are legally licensed by the federal government to do, is a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy, which allows you to either reduce or eliminate your debts completely. And it's all individual based. It's based on your income, and it's based on the amount of assets you own. So there are about 1,000 licensed insolvency trustees in the whole of Canada that are, as I said, federally licensed by the government to help people that are in debt, financial problems. You do have some what we call debt advisory firms out there, one's not for profit, and they work for the banks, they work with the banks. You'll end up paying back 100 cents on the dollar of your debt, but they stop the interest and penalty, but you've got to do that over a 3-year period. There are profit debt advisory firms that will either help you do a debt management plan. It's really an informal thing, doesn't stop creditors from harassing or calling you. Or they will do what we do as licensed insolvency trustees and then bring you into our office and say, okay, go ahead and file a proposal. So there are those various options out there. Just make sure you're talking to the right people if you ever have to have that discussion. So how do you go about and set up your budget? So once again, I said you can prepare your budget, but the best way to do that is track your expenses for the next 3 months. So take a little spreadsheet and put down what income you're coming in, what expenses you've got going out. And the biggest thing we see is people go to the bank machine, they draw $20, they spend it, they don't remember what they spent it on. For 3 or 4 months, keep those receipts. Go to Tim Hortons, get it to give me a receipt and write it down. Track that for a 3-month period, and then go through it and look at what your irregular expenses are. So 5 coffees a month or a week, gifts, donations, and then total up all those expenses and start highlighting and seeing where your trends are going. And I think a lot of people would be pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised that they do land up spending a lot more money on takeout coffees and takeout foods, and could cut back there and have a lot of money left over at the end of the month. Calculate the amount of money you need to meet your expenses each month. So as I said, we know what our fixed expenses are. So if you've got rent and car payments and that's $2,000, you know you need a minimum of $2,000 income to live. Then you go to your variable expenses, and that could take you up to $2,500, $3,000. So you know your income's got to be, your net take on income got to be at least $3,000. Then create a plan and write it down. So this comes back to setting goals. What do you want to do? You want to save for the future. You want to save to buy a car in a year's time. You want to save to go on a vacation in 2 years' time, or you want to save to retire at 65. But if you don't have these milestones and goals and how you're going to get there, it becomes a lot more difficult to actually get there. And then put into action. So this is what I said. We can all write a budget, drop it on the floor, put it in our bottom drawer. But if we don't measure the actual to the budget, we cannot tweak it as we go along, and therefore see where we were able to actually, we were overspending in some months. And you need that trend. You can't just say, well, this month I was so good I didn't buy any coffees, but next month you go and buy coffee every single day. You need that 3-month or 4-month trend to be able to see where you're heading with your budget, and where you could sort of trim it down to live today like nobody else, so you're able to live in the future like nobody else. And then, as we said, monitoring the budget and then making adjustments to meet the budget. Any questions on this so far? I'll give it a few seconds. Okay. So budgeting, there's a whole lot of apps out there where people can use to budget and track their spending. I work with a lady, she's from a different firm, does the same thing as I do, and she swears by Mint. She thinks it's the best thing. It's linked to your bank accounts. Every time you spend, it categorizes for you, and will give you a similar graph that you see on the right-hand side, telling you where you're spending your money, and sort of makes it a little bit seamless for you, so you can look at this at a glance and say, okay, I bought too many, I don't know, Starbucks fancy drinks or whatever they are, but you'll be able to see that at a glance. BullGuard has 2 main purposes: helps you understand your spending habits and to protect your cards from fraudulent charges, which fraud is becoming a bigger thing these days. And then you've got Birdie, where you reply to daily email with the last transaction you made that day, and the app provides you with the illustration of where all your money goes. The only caution we have with a lot of these apps is they link into your bank accounts. They say they're very secure and there's no risk, but there's always some kind of risk of fraud. So just be very careful with your linking and passwords and all that kind of stuff if you are going to use these apps to track your spending methodology. The old days, talking many, many years ago, our grandparents used what we call the envelope system. So they would carry an envelope for food, an envelope for clothes, an envelope for just ordinary spending money. And if they went to the grocery store, and they didn't have enough in that envelope to buy the groceries they needed. They either bought less groceries, or they would move money from the entertainment folder to the grocery folder, but then they realized they knew they couldn't go do the entertainment because that money was all used up. But that was the way they controlled their spending, and it was very effective because it was cash. Today we're using plastic, we're using credit cards, debit cards, so these apps may make it a lot more easier to track the stuff. I can tell you personally, I do budgeting. It's not the most exciting thing, but it becomes a necessary. But once you get into it, you actually start seeing where your money's going, and you start understanding where you can save and cut back. So the inevitable part of life is the cost of living. So you got your rent, your groceries, utility bills, transportation, all these things we need to live, and then the things we don't really need to live, but we want. So as we said at the bottom here, 50% of working Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. So it becomes stressful at the end of every month, juggling from one account to the other to figure out what you should pay first. So understanding your difference between your needs and your wants. So a need is a necessity, something required, a necessity for life, must be paid for your well-being. So you need somewhere to live, you need food, you need to get to work, you may need medication. Those are your needs. Your wants are desires, something that if you really sat back and said, if I didn't buy this, it's really not going to change my life. It's not going to make my life any different, any better, any worse, and it's something you can live without. So it becomes a little bit blurred in when we hear our kids say, "Oh, Daddy, I need a new cell phone." Well, do you really need a cell phone, or do you want a cell phone? Very different. If they've already got one, do they really need another one? So that becomes a sort of an understanding of where priorities lie and what's important versus not important. I was having that discussion with my daughter the other day, and this topic came out about the cell phones, and I said, well, if the cell phone companies would stop making so many new phones every year, and people's emotions would stop them buying, maybe the planet would be a little bit healthier. Who knows? But we've got this demand for so much gadgets that we don't really need, we just want, and people are willing to give up their livelihood, so food and groceries, to go out and buy the newest gadget or tool that's out there. So it's just something we have to really take stock and ask ourselves, is that necessary today, or could we wait? Are there better things we could be spending our money on? So questions you can ask yourself: when does a want become a need? I can't really see in a lot of circumstances, but maybe you need your cell phone for work and your cell phone breaks. That want may become a need because you can't function at work, or you need to be connected. Internet today, it used to be a want. It's now actually become a need. We all need the internet to live and survive, work, communicate with people. We're doing presentations now remotely. So that's become a need versus a want. What motivates you to buy? It's all emotion. We buy things based on emotion. So advertising, friends, trendy styles. We have a rough day, we go out and think if we buy something, it's going to make us feel happier. It does for a few minutes, but then I think that wears off after a while. If the urge disappears to the next day, so I think we've all been this. We run out, we buy a new jacket or something, and it's nice for a day or two, and then afterwards it's just a jacket, right? So you've got to really factor these kind of emotions into your buying decision. Do purchases make you happy? And I know a lot of people do, but that's just an emotional thing more than a real happiness. What needs are now collecting dust? So once again, if you had to clean out closets, one of the best things I ever heard was turn all your clothes inside out and put them on the hangers in your closet. For the next 4 to 6 months, whatever you wear, when you put it back in your closet, put it the right way around. At that end of 4 6 months, anything that's still turned inside out, you're never going to wear it. Get rid of it. Donate it to charity, have a garage sale to make some more money. But that's a way we could sort of unclutter all the clutteredness that we have in our lives. And then what can you learn to live without? So there has to become things where you can say, I don't really need this in order to survive and be happy. So areas to save, this is always a big thing. So check your bills, look for errors and overcharges, avoid late fees, penalties, and interest. So I personally had a gym membership, and when the pandemic hit, we all got this notification that we're suspending your contract. So I said, okay, that's great, thank you very much. But then they never came back to me and said, well, hold on, now we sort of semi-opening, we're going to start charging again. So they started charging me. So I called them up and said, but hold on, I haven't given you permission to do that. Go ahead and reverse it. And they land up reversing all those charges. So you've got to monitor, it's your life and your financial well-being. You should be monitoring these things. Negotiate better plans, so banking fees, service, telephone, cell phone. Shop around. The cell phone companies are all in business to get the customers. So it's a very big thing. I think every 2 years people shop around and look for better deals on the cell phone contracts. Bell in my area just came and laid a whole lot of lines, and they're going around saying, come on over, be our customer. We'll give you a good deal. So there are definitely options and deals to be made out there. So just keep looking here. It's a monthly, daily, yearly thing that you should just keep on top of that, because it's your money, rather money in your pocket than the large companies. Avoid service charges, fees and ATM fees if you can. So good bank accounts to have that don't charge fees. So like Simply Financial, so that's one that comes to mind right now. I think President's Choice has, where you can bank there for free and there's not the $14 or $15 a month usage fee. Review your food costs, so groceries, takeout, and buying lunch. So eat at home and bring your lunch. A lot of people make additional meals at night or leftovers that take that for lunch. Cook one dish for several meals, look for discounts and coupons, and buy in bulk. There's actually a very good app on the phone called Flip. And if you use that, that has a huge amount of coupons on there. You can search for deals and it'll tell you what's near you that's having a deal on groceries or whatever it is you're looking to buy. And then I've sort of brought this up a few times. Consider whether you need to own a car, a home, or the latest high-tech gadget. So can you catch a bus to work versus owning a car that may be sitting in your driveway, and you pay insurance and gas and maintenance and repairs? Or if you just catch a bus and it's easier, people downtown Toronto most probably do that because it's more cost efficient that way. And then understand the cost of financing or leasing anything, and whether it's variable rates, fixed rates, that all plays a huge impact down the line to the costs. Ways to cut back, so a little goes a long way. Once again, try taking food 3 times a week. You might find it's cheaper than buying takeouts. Either take coffee from home or drink coffee provided by your employer. Use transit, not a car, once a week, and then either maybe a pay-as-you-go cell phone versus a monthly cell phone charge. Reducing impulse spending. Once again, the emotional side of things. So avoid unnecessary trips to stores, shopping malls, and online buying sites. I think we all can say online buying must really become bigger today than it has ever been before, just because we're maybe sitting home, we're a little bored, we can't go to the store. We feel we're entitled to a new gift just because it's been tough, but sleep on those decisions or those thoughts, and you might find it's really not that necessary. Pay cash or use a debit for purchase and carry only the cash you're willing to spend. Reduce available credit on your credit card and line of credit if you're able to, so pay it down. Leave your credit cards at home and sleep in it and see if you still want it the next day. I have the saying that your credit card is a replacement for cash, not a replacement for debt. So if you have something you need to buy, and if you put it on your credit card, you're able to pay it off because the money's sitting there, well, then that's fine. But if you're going to put in your credit card not knowing how you're going to pay that off, that could become a big risk. So just be cautious on using your credit cards. So the next area, unless anybody has any questions, and say you can type in the chat if you don't want to unmute yourself. or you could unmute yourself and ask the question. But if there are questions, I can take some now, or I can move forward and we can sort of do some Q&A towards the end.
Actually, I do have a question, but this is something in regards to the credit card interest, if possible, if I can ask.
Yeah.
So I don't know how this is calculated. I am never sure the interest on the credit line or credit card is something around 19 point something or 21, 20. Different card companies give different interest rate. But when the interest comes in, it's not actually the exact amount of like 19% of what the statement was. So I don't know how it is calculated.
So yeah, it's a difficult thing to figure out. What you got to remember is if you look at your statement, and I got a copy of something here, but I didn't put that one area in. The bottom part of your statement will say if you do a purchase, your interest rate is 19.9% per year or 0.06% per day. And then if you take a cash advance, it's like 21.9% or 0.07 per day. And why they put that per day rate is, let's assume you got the balance at the beginning of November of $1,000, and then during the month of November you land up buying some more items. So, and then at the end of the month you make your minimum payment. The interest rate charging is on a daily basis, starting with the 0.06% on the $1,000, and then when you only make a minimum payment, you've missed the payment for those new transactions. So they basically take the 0.6% or whatever it is for the number of days those individual transactions have been on your account till the statement due date. So that's why it becomes a little bit difficult to calculate. You can't just take the opening balance and say what's 19% divided by 12 as the opening balance. It's all those other little transactions, and that's why they do it on a daily basis. Does that make sense?
Yes, now it makes sense. Yeah.
So they do it specifically because it's hard to calculate and they want interest on a daily basis. So we'll talk about in the next section. I've actually got it right here. So the very first point says paying your credit card bill just a couple of days late after the due date will not affect your credit report or the interest. That's not true. Once you've missed it, your credit can be affected. They report that you've got a missed payment, and the interest comes straight away on all the charges on a daily basis. So that's why it's very important to, if you can, pay off your credit cards at the end of every month. All right. Last month, your credit card balance was zero. This month, your statement shows that you made a $500 purchase. You pay off $400 by the due date. You'll be charged interest only on the $100 left to pay. Doesn't work that way. They charge you interest on the full $500 because you never paid off the minimum balance. So they don't just charge you on what left on the account. They charge you, as I said, the interest on a daily basis for the number of days that the $500 was outstanding. You pay off the $100, you leave $100 on. Now they're going to charge you interest on the $100 for every day that's outstanding. So it's a little bit of a tricky way they do it. So you've got to be very careful there. Use your credit card to take money out as cash advance. Do not have to pay interest on the amount you have withdrawn as long as you pay your credit card bill in full by the due date on your statement. So cash advances are very expensive because from the day you take out the cash advance, they start charging interest. Whereas on a credit card, if you buy today on a credit card, there's generally around about 21 or 25 days that you have to pay off that balance. If you pay off the balance on a purchase on your credit card, so you go buy a cell phone or a shirt or something, you're not charging any interest as long as you pay off that balance within the 21 days. Whereas if you take a cash advance on the exact same day, your interest charge is higher and it charges interest on a daily basis until you pay that back. So you got to keep that in mind. It becomes very expensive to borrow money on a credit card or take cash, draw cash on a credit card.
Sorry, I had a quick question for number 2. So what is the answer? Will you be charged interest on the $100 left to pay? Is it yes or no?
No, you charge from the $500. They take the $500. So you miss the minimum, the payment on the full debt. So you pay $400.
Oh, that would have been the 500.
Yeah, so it's on the $500. Yeah.
So you're charged interest on the full 500, even though you paid 400.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And then
I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah. And then and you also got to remember, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the saying of simple interest versus compounding interest. So simple interest is basically you take $500, they assume it's 10%, the interest is $50. That's all you got. And then the next year, same $500, let's see, we pay nothing, but the interest is $50. Whereas at compounding interest, what it is, and it's done on a daily basis, but I'm going to make it simplified here. You take $500, the interest is 10%, so at the end of the year, it's $550. Now they compound and they say, you're paying interest on the 550, not just on the 500. So that's how the bank works. So every day you're behind on your payment. So if it's $500, the balance, and they charge you interest, say $5 a day, day one, you're paying interest, you're paying interest on the 500, day two, you're paying interest on 505, day three, you're paying interest on 510. So it just keeps compounding and getting bigger and bigger. So you got to be careful of this compounding interest, right? It's a good thing when you're making money off your interest, but it's terrible when you're got to pay these credit card fees. So you just got to be very careful of that. So these, we all know what these are. We get offers in the mail every day saying, hey, here's a credit card, you've qualified for a credit card loan. I always get asked the question, how many credit cards should any one person have? And my answer is no more than 2. The reason behind that is you want your one that's your go-to credit card. The second one is if that credit card gets compromised, stolen, or lost, you at least have a backup credit card. But you shouldn't be carrying more than 2 credit cards. And the logic behind that is it affects your credit also. If you've got credit cards of 5 credit cards, each of $5,000, you have access to $25,000 worth of debt. Credit card companies do your credit bureau report, they see this. And if your income's not good, or you've got too much debt on the cards, you become you're risky to them, and that affects your credit score and credit rating in the credit bureaus. And chances are you may not get any loans or money unless you are able to bring down the debt on each of the cards. So your debt's not higher than your income to debt ratio. So you got to be very careful on having more credit cards and thinking that it's good to have that many credit cards.
If you don't activate the card, is it still considered like on your profile or on your credit rating?
So I don't believe it is until you activate it, because it depends. If you're saying activated from you've got a card and they give you a new one and you want to keep that card, you activate it, or they just send you in the card in the mail saying, hey, we've approved you for this.
Yeah.
The second scenario,
never activated.
yeah, the second scenario, I don't think they can do anything because you haven't really formally accepted it, right? Once you accept it, you're sort of on the hook for any debt incurred on that card. So, and that's when I think it would trigger a registration with the credit bureaus. But if you haven't activated, you've never actually ever applied for it, they technically can't put it on as you have this debt.
Thank you.
Okay. Stats Canada, so they say 96.8 million credit cards in the country, Visa and MasterCard credit cards, which sort of translate to about 2.5 credit cards per person. 89% have at least one credit card, 548 billion in transactions on credit cards a year, 4.4 billion outstanding credit card debt. So basically translate to about $4,200 of average credit card debt per person. 70% pay the balance in full, and I don't know what 64 tie purchase. I don't know what that really means, but I might be missing a word there, but I don't know what that means. I apologize for that. But this is it's staggering, right? When you sit back, and I think you had to break out this is basing it on the Canadian population, and there are a number of people out there, most really don't even have credit cards. They've never qualified for credit cards. There are a number of people who don't even have debt on credit cards. So when you narrow that down, the average credit card debt per person is most probably even higher at $27,000 to $30,000 per person when you just say who really has this credit card debt and is not paying back the balance. So it's actually higher than that. That's just based on if every person in Canada had a credit card, and we know that kids that wouldn't have this, and so you've got to just sort of think that the average debt per credit card is actually quite a bit higher. So what are the pros and cons on having a credit card? So it's obviously convenient when you need it. You can do online shopping. You may not have cash in your pocket. You don't want to run to the bank machine to withdraw the cash. So it's convenient. It's safer than carrying cash. There's chance of losing it or getting stolen. Can use in an emergency situation. Get reward points. As we said, you can do online purchases, rental of cars and homes, and they have these benefits of insurance and warranty, and it improves your credit rating. The disadvantage, it's too easy to overspend. So I'm sure, as a lot of people do, they go buy something on a credit card, somewhat forget they did it, and a week later go buy something again on the credit card, and when it comes to the end of the month, they've spent more than they can remember, and it's how they pay for it now. So you've got to be careful of that. Interest rates are very, very high. I've got a 12-year-old daughter, and we have this discussion every now and again. How does this work? And I sort of explain to her, well, you know, when you put your money in the bank and they're paying you 1.1% interest rate, but they're taking your money and lending it to another person on a credit card at 25% interest rate, that's how they make their money. So I think it's starting to sink in with her. She starts seeing how that actually works, because the bank's really using your money to fund somebody else, paying you 1% and making 25%. So it's a pretty good business to be in. The minimum payment's a trap. Then you'll see in the next one or two slides, I sort of have that summary down for you. Interest rates and terms change. They have their rights of set off. So if you have a credit card with a bank and you have your checking account and you're going to default, they could technically dip into that account to take the money if you're not paying them. There's a risk of fraud, identity theft, the fees, and obviously if you're not paying it, or as I said, your debt's too high, that can result in negative credit ratings for you and hurt you if you want to ever go rent a place or buy a car or something like that. So a little cartoon here starts off, hello MasterCard, I'm sorry I missed my last 2 months payments. Money's been kind of tight lately, but you'll be happy to know I'm finally prepared to pay my long overdue bill. Do you take Visa? So this is a common thing we see where part of the warning signs, as I'm going to mention here, is making minimum payments, exceeding credit card limits, available credit limit is increasing, using credit to pay credit, so using a MasterCard to pay a Visa, using credit card to meet basic living expenses, and obtaining new credit cards to help you out with the old one. A big thing we've seen today also is you've got this credit card that's at a 25% interest rate. You get a thing from the bank, hey, let's convert you to this interest-free or this low-interest credit card. It will reduce your monthly payments. But the fine print's telling you that that's only for a period of 4 to 6 months. At 6 months, it's going to jump to 30% or 25%, whatever it is. So what we find people do is they switch to this low-interest credit card. They still keep their old credit card. So now they've got two. They keep this big debt on there. They don't actually ever land up paying it off. And they see that the other credit card is zero balance, so they start spending on that one. At the end of 6 months, the interest kicks back in on the new credit card, and you're in a worse off position. So you've got to be very careful. You're reading the terms and understanding what you're possibly getting into. Big question I get from what I do from an insolvency point of view is, I don't want to do a proposal of bankruptcy because it's going to affect my credit for a proposal's maximum of 6 years. First time bankruptcy is a maximum of 7 years. Second time bankruptcy is 14 years your credit is affected for. And I say to people, okay, that's fine. I understand what you're saying, but please show me your credit card statements. And they show it to me, and this is what you see. Right one says estimated time to pay off your balance in full is 19 years and 0 months. That's assuming you make no additional purchases. The left one, it's going to take this person, if you see a minimum payment due of $46, says if you only pay the minimum payment due each month, It will take you approximately 20 years and 10 months to pay off the balance in the statement. I kid you not, I've seen statements that say it will take you 99 years to pay it off. And I say to people, well, tell the bank if you guarantee you're going to live for 99 years, you'll keep making the minimum payment. But how this works, and it comes back to the earlier question we had on how do you calculate this, the interest. So, and the minimum payments. The minimum payment is generally, it's generally around about a 2.5 or 3% of the outstanding balance. So in this case, the credit card company is saying to this individual, pay back $46.87. That's your minimum payment. However, we've charged you $36.87. Therefore, you're effectively only paying $10 a month. So based on this, assuming you don't make any more purchases on this card on the balance of $25,000, it's going to take you 20 years and 10 months to pay off this credit card. So when you sit back and you think that at $2,500 is going to take me 20 years to pay this off, just because the interest is so high and your minimum payment isn't as high as the interest. So that's why we always say try and make a payment greater than the minimum interest so it will pay this out quicker. If you're unable to do that, so I say to people, based on this, they're telling you it's going to take you 20 years or 19 years to improve your credit because this is going to sit there for that long. A proposal bankruptcy may be your best option to improve your credit, all depending on your circumstances, but we can improve your credit anything from 6 to 7 years. So that's your consideration. And your credit might be already affected if you've missed payments, you're delinquent on some payments. Cost of credit card, this is some little basic math. So if you have a balance of $1,000 and you're paying $100 a month, it's going to take you 11 months to pay this off. At the end of 11 months, you paid an additional $75. If you have a balance of $3,000, you're taking 38 months, so it's just over 3 years, you're paying additional $783 in order to pay off that debt. For 79 months, 6.5 years, same thing, $5,000, paying $100 a month, you're going to pay almost $2,800, maybe $2,900 more just in interest payments. For the $7,500, you're going to be paying back $22,000, which is over an 18-year period. And then they're saying for $10,000, you don't have enough years to live to pay that off. So, and that assumes you're not adding any more debt to your card. So it's very scary when you round down the numbers like this, that it's very expensive to have a credit card if you can't manage it. So just take that into consideration on any credit cards or any debt that you owe or you own and you use it. Credit card fixed, so you don't have to. If you don't have, you can't use it. Use a debit card or use cash. So a lot of the debit cards these days, because that's the other issue we get is, oh, I need my debit card because I need my credit card. We've got to spend, we've got to put it on the internet. We've got to buy something over the internet or pay for a car. Well, debit cards are allowing you to do that these days. So credit does not mean you have any extra income. Pay off the balance at the end of every month. This is on the government Canada website. Keep the credit limit low. Pay just a minimum. Will cost more over time, which we discussed, and then review your monthly statements because there are fees in that charge on that. I'm going to try to speed up a little bit because I think we've got about 10 minutes left. So just want to get through some of the stuff. When you apply for credit cards, so consider your annual fees, interest rates, credit limits, reward programs, what insurance and warranties they have. Shop around, read the fine print and reasons or purpose of the need. Interest on credit. So taking insurance on credit cards is never recommended. It's a cost that if you read the fine print, you must really something really strange has to happen to you for that to actually benefit you. This is the general agreement, what you look at. And if you look in the middle, annual interest rates, basically says purchase of 19.75%. So this is where you get the rate of 4.9% for the first 3 months. Then it jumps to 19.75% following the promotional period. Cash advances are 21% and balance transfers are 21%. If you miss payments, the interest is going to go up to 24%. And then it says 21 days in order to that you got to pay before interest will kick in. Using a credit card is borrowing money, so it's not your own money. Use other sources of credit with lower interest rates, or lines of credit. Pay balance off in full every month if you're able to. Pay more than the minimum balance if you can't pay the balance off. Do not miss any payments. Do not treat this as found money. So it's like as money you just think you have at your availability. Credit should be your last resort. It's just a tool. It's not a means for you to go splurge and spend. Read and review your monthly statements. Do not take cash advances. Interest starts immediately. Second card holder. So if you give somebody a credit card, you're liable for what they spend the card, and in certain cases they may also be liable for what's spent on all those credit cards. It affects your credit rating, and never lend your credit card to anybody for any reason. It's could land up costing you a lot more. And once again, credit insurance, I would recommend not buying or taking that out with your credit card company. They only sell that to you because they make money when they sell it to you. Tips and types of credit: you got credit cards, mortgage, car loans, lines of credit, bank overdraft, payday loans, student loans, deferred payment loan, finance companies, secured loans, so that's on motor vehicles, homes, and then all the unsecured loans, which are pretty much more some of the ones we mentioned above. 2 collection agencies in Canada that monitor everybody's. It's based on information you give to the banks and they report to them. So Equifax and TransUnion. You can and you should be applying for your credit at least once a year, just to make sure there are no suspicious transactions on there, and more the report than worrying about what your score is. You want to review that, and if there's any errors, you should clean that up as soon as possible because it does take a bit of time. 6 C's of credit: so you have character, trust. Are you trustworthy and reliable? Capacity: do you have the ability to repay the loan? Are you going to give any collateral, so a home or motor vehicle? Current economic conditions affect the ability to lend you the money, your credit history, and then your net worth, what you're worth to the credit card company. A little bit on credit report versus credit score. So credit report is really just all the transactions and history that you're doing, who's reported on you, who's lent you money, how much you've paid, are you an R9 or R7 or whatever it is. And your credit score is really just a number that determines are you credit worthy. And I think later on we talk about the range of that, but this is just basically it determines to the banks and the credit card companies what your score is, and that determines whether they should lend you money or not. I'm going to just skip over this so that you can get on the government website. Basic information in a credit report is your name, employment information, credit account, public records, so any insolvencies, legal actions, any inquiries lenders have made from you. Some mortgages are or not, your cell phone bill. So these things help you as long as you're paying them on a regular basis. We get asked what the different things mean on the credit score. So you've got the R rating, an I, and a 0. And all really just depends on the type of credit you have. So an R means you're using credit cards. An I means like it's a car loan or a mortgage. And the 0 means it's like a line of credit, so you can keep borrowing money, taking, paying it off, taking, paying it off. So you'll see those ratings if you ever do your credit report. And then they have a scale from 0 to 9. So 0 means you're too new, they don't know who you are, so they're never going to lend you money. A 1 means you're paying this on a regular basis. And then 2, 3, it's all how many days you've missed your payments. A 7 means you've basically compromised your debt, you've done a consumer proposal. And then 9, it's like a bad debt, they've written it off, you've gone bankrupt or something like that. Credit scores really, as I said, just a measure. The banks have their own calculation, but the credit bureaus do. So you may run a credit bureau score and it says you're in 600. You may go to a bank and a bank may say you're 700. They have their own formulas of calculating this. So it doesn't hurt to try, but the more you go apply for credit, the more it actually hurts your score. So you've got to be careful there. If you're checking yourself, it's called a soft hit. Doesn't affect your credit score, but if you have a credit card company or a loan company checking it too often, that impacts your credit score. So just be careful of how much credit you're actually running around applying for. This is a little bit of a visual as to where the credit ratings lie. So 559 and under, you're poor. 560 to 659, you're fair. You're good at 660 to 724, very good 725 to 759, and then your excellent credit score if you're over 760. Things that affect your credit score, so late payment history, credit utilization. So they generally don't want you using more than 30% of your available credit. If you're using more than that, you become a risk. how long you've had an account. So if you have an old credit card that you're not using, use it to keep it active, because that's actually a very good thing to helping build your credit score. Credit inquiries, so hard hits for soft hits, which I spoke about, and then the type of credit you have, the mix of retail credit versus loans and all that stuff. Those all have an impact on calculating how good or bad your credit score could be. And it's got the summary of the points roughly on the right-hand side there. Spoke about this: obtain your credit reports, check for errors, identify any unpaid debts, pay bills, clean off anything that shouldn't be there, maintain old debt, which is good terms, and then maintain a low balance. I think this presentation is going to be sort of up on the library website. So here's the contact information for the two credit agencies if you need to contact them. You can request a report to pay by paying a fee. You can either fax or mail it in, or you could actually call. You could go online. Somehow they have a free sort of scaled down report on yourself, and they are very good to check every once a year just to make sure there's nothing that's on the account that sort of shouldn't be there. So I had to rush through the end there, but I wanted to get to some quick questions if anybody has. I know we've got about, I don't know, a minute. I've got time if people want to just ask a few quick questions. So you can type them in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself.
I had a quick question. If you request the credit report, does that affect your credit rating?
No, if you could request it from the credit bureau, you do it online, it's considered a soft hit. It doesn't affect your credit rating, no. But if you go into like a bank and they run their credit report on you, it's like you're applying for credit, that affects your credit rating. That's called a hard hit versus a soft hit.
I do have one more question regarding credit report. Sometimes the bank offer credit reports as well. For example, the RBC app or RBC website, they do have a section where you can check your own report. So
Yeah.
Does that count as a bank running an inquiry, or you running your inquiry to check out?
I think that, so the bank started doing that about a year ago or so, because there was a lot of compromise of credit cards and fraud, and they wanted to help people. I believe that is a soft hit. Once you're doing it to your bank, it's considered a soft hit. So that wouldn't affect your credit report. Otherwise, they wouldn't offer it to you, right? Because it would be impacting your credit report if you did it every single time. And I think it's a very scaled down version of your credit report. If you had to actually fax or email Equifax or TransUnion and get a copy of your credit report, it's a pretty big document, and it's sometimes a bit complicated to read. The one you get, I did my free one online with Equifax, and it's very, very scaled down. So you can also either free Credit Karma, Borrowwell, they do these things. They pull it from TransUnion, but it's also very scaled down. It doesn't give you a lot of information you'd get if you went directly to those two credit bureau agencies. Any other questions?
I just want to thank you. Thank you very much. It was so interesting to see. I wish there were more people to benefit from your presentation. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So
thank you very much, Ilan. That was great. It was very clear and it was very helpful. And I was here as library staff, but I found that really useful, because so much of modern financing can be a little bit mystifying, and it's nice to have some of those mysteries sort of cleared up.
perfect.
So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
And we'll make the presentation available, because I got I had a couple people email me saying that they had been unable to join, so they're really happy that they'll be able to access the recording. So
Perfect.
A huge thank you for joining us today. That was extremely helpful. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. If you need any more in the future, please let me know. I've got a lot of good topics to talk about.
Oh, that was great.
Perfect. Great. Thank you, everybody.